Welcome, everybody. I call to order the Bethany City Council for Tuesday, September 19th. Would you please rise for the invocation and the flag salute? Mr. Knapp, do you have our guest?
I do. Tonight, Mr. Lawrence Ross will be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Ross is a local Bethany businessman. He's built his business over the last 20 years, and he believes in giving back to the community. He currently serves on the Northwest Chamber Board and Public Arts Projects, and he looks forward to moving the business community forward here in Bethany. Lawrence?
Would you please join me as we say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Praying for us tonight will be Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the city. Thank you for the people in the city. Thank you for the many blessings that you provided for us. We seek your guidance and direction in all that we say and do. Help us to have a good meeting tonight to make progress for the residents of the city of Bethany. They deserve it, and you can provide the power and enthusiasm to get the job done. Thank you for all you provided for us in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Item 1 tonight is a consent docket A through E. Do we have a discussion or motion for approval?
Might have a couple of questions about a couple of things. Or you want me to pull them? D and E,
D and E.
or can we just talk about them, or do we need to pull them?
Yes.
I move approval of the items on the consent docket.
I'd like to pull D and E then, if we need to pull them to discuss. I don't know if we need to pull them or not. David?
Let me just discuss these.
You could have a motion to approve all items except D and E and discuss those separately. Probably be the better way to do it.
Okay.
Okay, I rescind my motion and move approval of A, B, and C on the consent docket.
I'll second.
Please cast your votes. Consent docket A, B, and C passed. Now we have a discussion for D and E.
I was just wanting, just so people don't know on D mainly. I mean,
Okay.
was it just a last minute oversight, Rocky forgot, or?
Heretofore, the pyrotechnical displays have, prior to this year, been approved by staff. However, in reviewing our ordinances with our city attorney, those types of displays require council approval, and the school was unaware of that procedure. And so staff went ahead and approved the pyrotechnical display and communicated with council that it would be on the consent docket for ratification tonight. So, and they understand that that's required in the future, and they apologized.
And then on E, it's just kind of a question. There are so many groups and organizations that could use that tower. I mean, is this destruction or removal of the tower?
This would actually be the demolition of the tower. We had, and I'll let maybe other council members if they'd like to visit, but we had some interest by others, but the amount of rent that they were wishing to pay was so small that it winds up continuing to be a liability. At some point, we would have to address the antenna one way or another. That was this $6,500 was included in the budget. It was part of the bid packet that the Shiloh, the winning bidder, submitted. At the time, we didn't include that because we had these other questions continuing to go. Dr. Harris or Mayor, I don't know if you all have.
So this was included in the original bid?
Yes, sir.
It's not a change order then?
It's a change order because we didn't originally accept it when we accepted the rest of the bid.
It was
So
an
it was an
add.
option,
It was an alternate.
Okay.
and all the bidders bid on this project as well as an alternate.
Do I have a motion for approval for D and E?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Please cast your votes. D and E passed. Item 2, let's get connected. Do I have a staff report or anything? This is a public hearing item.
Yes, sir. With your indulgence, I think I'll go to the front podium.
Okay, sure, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I've got a few things to share on this particular item with you. There are two things primarily we're asking for tonight. One is the approval of ordinance number 1942, as well as the approval of resolution 1468. Ordinance 1942, in essence, makes it easier for people to build sidewalks in Bethany. Ordinance 1468 puts a couple of additional caveats to that, and that makes it necessary for us to require that the construction be in compliance with ADA standards, and also it sets the permit fee for sidewalks to be $5. So that in a nutshell is what I'm here to visit with you about, but I'd also like to talk a little bit bigger picture tonight. It was about a week and a half ago, I visited with the planning and zoning and provided a similar type of presentation to them. What is being envisioned with this, we're calling it Let's Get Connected for now until a better idea is formulated. And tonight, just as planning and zoning did a couple of weeks ago, represents a jumping off point. We have to have a starting point for a project. As you all know, our comprehensive plan, it goes on about us connecting people, places, and our various parks in our community. And so this is, again, a first draft of getting us to that point. What is envisioned is a multi-pronged approach. One is that we make it easy for citizens to construct sidewalks, hence Ordinance 1942 and Resolution 1468. Number 2, the city begin in earnest constructing sidewalks. We've done a little bit, and I'll come back to that in a moment, but also starting in earnest constructing sidewalks in the major areas to connect major points in our community. Number 3, establishing bike trails to emphasize connecting the metro Oklahoma City trails that already exist, enhancing our park trail system to highlight what we might call a city of parks experience. And then finally, the exploration of public transportation options for our community. With that, so to bring your attention back to where we are right now, I've included a comment in there, and I've joked with many folks here in the audience that when I came here, I kind of joked about, well, who stole all the sidewalks out of Bethany? Because we seem to have a lot of missing sidewalks in various places. And as we continued to go into this, it was just wonderful having this comp plan already set in place that contemplated doing these things, so we could go ahead and continue to work to build a program for you to consider. So currently in Bethany, I think one of the reasons why we maybe don't have as many sidewalks as what we might is because it's very difficult for people to build sidewalks. They're considered a full-fledged public improvement currently. They require plans, specifications, engineering approval, council approval, bonding, and final acceptance. And that's a lot. for someone building a sidewalk in front of their house. Many other communities where I've lived before, it was nowhere near that difficult for someone to build a sidewalk. They built it to the city's specifications, and that's what's being proposed tonight in the ordinance. So in this new program that's being proposed, the city staff will issue a permit for a sidewalk that sidewalk would be in the city's right-of-way. The city would come out, the sidewalk would be required to be built to our standards, and I'll come back to those in a moment ago, and it will be inspected by our city engineer or staff. And if it's built to specs, it'll be approved and they'll be on their way. So there won't be all this site plan and other things required. We are establishing a minimum of 5 foot wide for our sidewalks unless there is some type of reason why and the engineer signs off on that that's not possible. When we met with planning and zoning, they gave us some very good feedback. They said, hey, if you really want to incentivize sidewalks in Bethany, you think about a couple of things. One is that you set the fee to be $5. That's a very low fee, but it's a minimal fee that we think and we concur with, that our main goal is to build sidewalks, not necessarily capture a lot of money off of people building sidewalks. So there's item number one. The other item that we established to where those sidewalks are required to be built to ADA standards. So making it pretty straight and forward. So that, again, is what Resolution 1468 is doing. Part two is for the city to construct sidewalks. And I'd like to draw your attention to this map that is at your station. I think we had some at the front if you all like to pick those up. We've also placed the map in your iPad packet as well. And what I'd like to do is just take a moment and explain what we have done. One more time, I want to emphasize, underscore, highlight, bold, and otherwise emphasize, this is a draft and a jumping off point. It's not a done deal. We'll gather feedback as time goes on to finalize. But what we have done is we have identified those certain areas that, one, at the top, as we go down, they're easy for staff to do in short spurts, but then become more complex as we go on. So, and what we've done is we've just used the Greek alphabet for now to name these trails, not to name them, to identify them. Hopefully with our parks board, and eventually you all will come to the point where we'll be able to finally name formally our trails that we have. The first one, of course, would be Alpha. Alpha Trail connects downtown Southern Plaza to the City Hall complex and library. We have construction going on across the street. It makes great sense, and we have done that. The city crews, by the way, a quick side note, right, wrong, or different, we haven't built a lot of sidewalks over the years, and so consequently our staff has been learning or relearning to build sidewalks. And so we started with these short, small areas like here by City Hall where we could do some of those. Our Beta Trail, which is shown in green, connects the downtown to Southern Plaza and the City Hall complex. Again, big population centers, like small spurts of sidewalks that we could do to again make a big effect. As we move on, what we're identifying as a Gamma Trail will connect the Children's Center and Southern Plaza to the library and City Hall complex. So a lot of this activity is going on right here around the City Hall area. Delta Trail is the area that is in mostly Ward 3. It's up north. It would connect Bethany Public Schools, Southern Nazarene University to residential areas in downtown. And again, this hasn't been vetted. It's just a start. I did want to point out to you, you might notice the one path that is the second to the far right that is the long trail. That is what we're contemplating with that, just so you know, is the alleyway that goes through that neighborhood. And we actually had a conversation about one of the properties there not too long ago and the necessity for us to obtain back that alleyway all the way through. So that is contemplated in the draft plan. So that is the north neighborhood. Epsilon Trail represents a very large challenge, correct, Steve? 36th Street, some of it would be easy for us to construct. Some of it is going to be challenging because of the short right-of-way that exists in certain areas and other drainage other drainage situations. So that would be Epsilon Trail. The next trail is shown in the light blue. We'll call it the Zeta Trail, which would connect businesses, schools, home with the Council Road District. I'm sure some of you have watched, as I have, seen people walk down Council Road in busy times. I've even seen baby strollers out there, and so that really underscores, I think, our need to continue to address our sidewalks. Ada Trail then would be its counterpart on Rockwell that would connect 36th to 23rd Street. And Theta Trail finally would be the very dark blue that goes along 23rd Street and also 19th Street. And then I'll come back to the ODOT project in just a moment. So, of course, we have the school that is a part of that is on 23rd and Rockwell. And then you might see in the green that is the kind of the upside down L shape, that green area represents what we're calling the ODOT project. We're about 80% along the way on that particular project, and we're looking at spring of 2018 for construction of that part. So once again, I want to emphasize that showing these in trails, I think, makes the most sense for now, because as we get into those, there are certain areas where sidewalks do exist already. So part of what we're contemplating is connecting sidewalks to sidewalks so that eventually we have entire trail system built. So that represents the part 2 of this. And the city has begun already in-house with our crews building some of these small areas, but then we will need to go out for bid for the construction of the larger areas. What we're anticipating doing is doing it on a square yard basis so that we have a concrete bid. I'm accustomed, we've done this often. The city I was with before, we'd go out for bid, and then that would give us time to finalize what areas we were actually going to construct. And so as we have that in the works at the same time, then we're finalizing plans on what streets are the highest priorities. So again, and what is addressed in this is connecting the biggest populations with centers with our points of interest and with one another. So that's part 2. Part 3 is, and I failed to mention providing safe walkability to folks. Of course, we have a lot of seniors and senior living groups, and being able to allow them to be able to be mobile is important, whether they're ambulatory with assistance or just walking. I think that's very helpful. Part 3 is the bike trails. If you just flip the page to the other side, this is, again, a very rough first draft, and it shows connecting on the west side of Bethany, connects over to the trail system that Oklahoma City. I give them a lot of credit. They've done a great job of building a trail system, both sidewalks as well as bike trails. And so us being able to take advantage of the trail system that already exists, I think, benefits us. But one of the things I think we identified during our visioning meetings that we had for 23rd Street is that there are bicycle enthusiasts around the area, and being able to attract and entice those folks to come through our community would be greatly beneficial. And so we want to tap into those groups and find out what their opinions are. And at that visioning meetings, we heard all sorts of things, all the way from 36th Street being great because it's busy to 30th Street being great because it's not busy. So, like I said, there's differing opinions there. Part 4 is enhancing the park trail system. We have our parks board off and going, as I mentioned a moment ago. And the idea is perhaps we could become, part of our brand could become a city of parks. We do have, with our 106 acres of park space with our population, that translates into 238 square foot per person of park space that we have here in Bethany, and that's substantial. And so I think being able to take that out and fly that for a while, I think is great. The final area is the exploration of public transportation. As you all recall, during our budgeting process, we had a conversation about public transportation. I anticipate us doing the feasibility of study on that project later on this year, possibly third or fourth quarter. So whether or not that actually gets implemented this year is still yet to be seen. But the two major options I see at this point that deserve detailed study are, one, hooking into the Embark system, which we've already had preliminary conversations with them, and it will be an expensive price tag, but we do have funds available, or budgeted, rather, for that. Or possibly looking in-house and running a public transportation system for Bethany that perhaps could drop off and connect to such places as Embark, but be able to have the freedom to go to those places where our folks need them to go. So the details and the stories yet to be told on that, and that'll come a little bit later. So thank you for allowing me to kind of go through all that, but I thought it would be short-sighted if we just came in and talked about making it easier for people to build sidewalks without an idea of a bigger picture in place. The hope is, I think, from my standpoint anyway, that perhaps this might even develop into our own MAPS type of program for Bethany eventually that would become even greater. Today is just a jumping off point. We're asking for your consideration of Ordinance 1942 as well as Resolution 1468, and I'll stand for questions.
Anyone have any questions?
I do.
Go ahead,
Go
Curtis.
ahead.
I will defer to the senior councilman.
Well, thank you. Thank you. There's a few things they're left out of your presentation. You're
Okay.
done with your presentation, right? It strips the city council of its power, it looks like, completely, and turns it over to you completely.
I would agree with that respectfully.
Well,
You all will
respectively, I
have,
mean, right here in section D, C, 158.32, I mean, it's in several places right here. Page 404.
oh, you're talking about the ordinance itself?
The actual, yeah, that's
Okay,
what we're talking
yes.
about. The actual ordinance itself changes it from city council, onerous city council, which I appreciate you looking out for us doing tedious tasks. But we're talking about, we have 5 square miles. You know, we might know some things you don't know. You know,
Fair enough. I guess I would offer that I think people building sidewalks on their residence, the idea of having to come before city council might not be the most encouraging to them to build their sidewalks.
but is it just that, or is it deciding where to put them in general, too?
So and that's what I thought you were going at when you first
both.
mentioned the question. So the actual decision as far as the big public sidewalks are concerned, that definitely will be a city council decision as far as what priorities that we do things. We had to start somewhere, and so this is a draft. We've done these little small areas that I was talking about a moment ago, but that's why we chose the Greek alphabet, so we wouldn't predispose any certain ones. So if we get into this and we hash it out and decide that we want to do Ada Trail first, then that's great. But as far as, I think we just need to get started. That's my thought. Yes.
I had a couple questions. In Ward 2, I live in a neighborhood where we have 3-foot wide sidewalks. And this new ordinance, would that require a 5-foot sidewalk where you have a 3-foot sidewalk already pre-existing? Or would that be subject to the engineer's approval? And what I'm concerned about is we don't have an overlay for Ward 2 because we have an eclectic neighborhood of, how can I say this? We have an eclectic neighborhood related to how it was developed and what was built over the years. So we don't have a plan for sidewalks in our neighborhood. And I'm concerned that we're kind of jumping ahead in order to enact this ordinance without a plan for our neighborhood, because there's one contradiction there in that we have 3-foot wide sidewalks, but then this ordinance would allow somebody on a residential lot to put in a 5-foot wide sidewalk. I mean, what's the solution to that? What do you recommend?
Well, I think we purposefully included, and that was a conversation that came up during planning and zoning too, similar to that, where it's possible or feasible. And Steve, I might defer to you if you'd like to answer part of that.
Yeah, first of all, the ordinance obviously doesn't make anyone replace their 3-foot with a 5-foot. It's only for any new, or if they want to tear it out and put it in, it would be 5 foot. To go any less than 4 feet would probably be in would not be allowed by ADA standards unless there's some physical reason that you can't build one, and that's kind of the way the ordinance is proposed. If there's a physical reason you can't build the 5 foot, it is approvable under those circumstances to go less.
But my question is, we don't have a plan for sidewalks in Ward 2 in my neighborhood. It's just like, if we pass this ordinance, a resident could put a sidewalk in, and that's okay. But we don't have a big plan to say, this is where we would like sidewalks to be if you're going to develop in this area. That's what I'm concerned about, because we don't have that. And so we're giving them permission to do that, which is great, but we don't have a plan to refer to. And, you know, if the engineers wants some reference or authority to go look at, well, okay, we appreciate your $5, fee, but we want you to we would recommend that you put a sidewalk in this area at this width, which would be consistent with the neighborhood and the look that we're trying to convey in the neighborhood. I don't think we're there yet, are we?
Well,
I bet-
with
Steve?
the property up, next to Albertson's homeland, Gilbert's property. I mean, we didn't have a sidewalk ordinance there, really, did we? I mean, on 23rd.
Yes, our current ordinance would require a 6 foot wide sidewalk on a major thoroughfare, and this ordinance change would leave that in play. But again, when physical constraints, you're probably thinking of the hill right there. When physical constraints mean that you have to go lower, then you just have to go lower if you just can't feasibly do it to the width. And I believe that's what the P&Z wanted added to this language, was if there's some physical or other reason you can't, then you can go smaller. I believe Mr. Palmer, correct me if I'm wrong, is addressing not necessarily an engineering, but more of an aesthetic, or at least a common theme in a certain area, and that's fine too. But like I say, if you go less than 4 feet, I'm afraid you would be in violation of federal standards to go less than 4 feet.
What do you do when, like if I wanted to pour a sidewalk in front of my house and it's going to be 5 feet, but my neighbors on either side have a 3 foot? What does that end up? How do
Right, we
address
would
that?
have to have a transition piece at where they joined up. Yeah.
That sounds really patchwork.
You're
and
right.
There's no plan. I think we're kind of, it's the cart before the horse. We don't have a recommended plan for my neighborhood for sidewalks, but yet we're going to let everybody put in a 5 foot sidewalk. So we're going to have, like the mayor said, a hodgepodge of different width sidewalks in the neighborhood with no plan.
I don't want to speak for the city manager, but I believe to get these things connected together might be less than optimal, but it still would be preferable to having no sidewalk connecting to a 3 foot.
Well, I'm pretty sure they don't have 5 foot sidewalks and 3 foot sidewalks connected together in Nichols Hills. They don't have them in Crown Heights. They don't have them in other areas where there are overlays, especially in Norman. So why would we want to do that in Bethany at this point in time?
I'm going to defer to the city manager on that question.
If a neighborhood wanted to get together and put sidewalks in front of all of their houses and they agreed upon what they wanted, would each neighbor then have to plunk down $5 and get a permit? Or could this be something that could just be allowed for the group if there was a plan?
Currently, the authority doesn't, through the resolution, doesn't allow for that. It would be per residence. However, if you all wish to consider something additional to incentivize that, you certainly could do that.
And please understand, I know that we're getting the vision plan for the Bethany District Neighborhood Association and Ward 2 on, we're making momentum, we're getting that plan taken care of. But, I mean, I've talked to a guy tonight who's redoing his house, and, when you do that, you obviously allocate for sidewalks or driveways or whatever. So I just want our eclectic neighborhood to have some kind of consistent plan to get where we want to be so that we can improve the neighborhood and ultimately increase our property value. I mean, that's kind of where we are. And I know that there are exceptions, but I don't know if we're there yet. I mean, what do you say about that?
I guess, I can see both sides. I can see and understand how you wouldn't wish for it to be hodgepodge, but then again, how long do we wait, and what happens if folks don't go along with a new standard that's let's say the new standard is decided, well, we'll do 4. That we divide by 2 and 4. I'm just making up a number. But let's say it's 4, but somebody already has a 3 foot and they don't wish to re-pour their sidewalk. We're kind of in the same kind of scenario, I would think. So my thought would be, wouldn't it be better to go ahead and encourage sidewalks to be built, hopefully to the 5 foot standard? If it turns out that that's not possible, then it could be built to a smaller standard, narrower standard that fits the neighborhood. And again, that's why we have the engineer.
Well, there is a lapse in time where if this ordinance is passed, that they can do that now without having a plan in place. And they could do that. And, I mean, you could have a house that has no sidewalks on either side, and they want to put a 5 foot sidewalk on their house, and it would be a standalone sidewalk. There is no connectability there. That's just a problem, because you're giving them an opportunity to do that, but yet there's no plan to connect any of this with anything other than what they can do on their own residence. And that's maybe there needs to be a task force between the P&Z and the city council to come up with a master sidewalk plan so that we can have recommendations about what should and shouldn't be done, or what we would recommend, so that when a resident does have an opportunity to put in a sidewalk, it's consistent with what will be done now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. That's why we have an eclectic neighborhood to begin with, and we're trying to strive to improve the situation so that it looks like an organized neighborhood with uniform, not necessarily lack of uniqueness, but there is a set standard recommended for the neighborhood. I don't think we're there yet.
Steve, you're kind of arguing against yourself there. Like when you're running for office, just because we have buildings sitting 1 foot off the lot line, doesn't mean we can't pass an ordinance that says you can't do that anymore.
No,
So,
I'm not arguing against myself. I'm just saying that this is a great idea, but I think the timing and the sequencing is a little off. We need to have a sidewalk plan and a task force with the P&Z and the city council to come up with a specific plan and then implement the ordinance.
Unless I'm wrong, I mean, I thought that's what we were doing, a 5 foot ADA, boom, it's done.
Right, but in my neighborhood, if you put a 5 foot sidewalk next to a 3 foot sidewalk, or you can have a standalone sidewalk with no sidewalks on either side, it's not a cohesive plan.
Well, War Acres does that in a couple of spots, and they use mosaics and different things. I mean, or transition, like you said. I mean, it can be done.
Well, and currently we have no sidewalks, so maybe some sidewalks better than no sidewalk.
Well, I agree with that. It's just, I don't, and I like the premise, I like the idea. I just don't think that the process of let's get connected, I think that's a great deal, but I think that the way we unpack this needs to be done correctly. And I don't think we're there. And part of the process is nobody asked me. And I just found out about it. And this is my neighborhood, our neighborhood. And so I have issues with that. So if we had a task force leading up to this meeting with specific plans about what we wanted to do and how we wanted to do it, I think we could have fleshed all this out without having to waste the council's time.
This isn't just a Ward 2 issue. This is a citywide, isn't it?
Well, the last time I checked, I'm a representative of Ward 2, and these are issues that I want to address in the city council, and I think that are legitimate, and they apply to all the city as a whole. But, I'm all for this. I think it's good. It's just that we need to have a task force and a plan, a legitimate sidewalk plan, maybe hire somebody to do it and get it to put together so that we're doing this correctly, not only with the ADA requirements, but also having a plan for the neighborhood. Because, at some point, we're going to have an overlay in the Bethany District Neighborhood Association in Ward 2. And we're going to have to implement this kind of different plan on sidewalks and make it fit. We're going to put a square peg in a round hole.
Meanwhile, though, I too represent Ward 2. We need sidewalks, and it's been onerous to do a sidewalk, and this is allowing the sidewalk to be done for a $5 permit. And if people want to go to that expense to put the sidewalk in front of their house so their kid can ride back and forth on it on their little tricycle, I think that's great. And if it doesn't connect anywhere else, that's okay. At least they have a sidewalk, and maybe their neighbor will then decide to do the same thing. So it's a start.
For the
It's
record,
not the finish.
I'm all for sidewalks. I just want to do it right.
Let's say we bulldozed every house in Ward 2 or Ward 1 or Ward 3 or Ward 4. This would still have 5-foot sidewalks. The standard would be the same. I mean, that's what I'm saying. This is a standard, isn't it? It's an ADA, width, height, all that stuff, curb cuts, 5 feet all the way through. So, I mean, it's a standard. This
It's
is
just
a
some places it won't be possible to do
Right.
5 foot.
And I can
the
think of a
engineer
lot right
would
now
just-
with retaining walls and things, you're just not gonna be able to do it, and that's,
The fact is, we're not going to bulldoze every house in Bethany. We got to fix what we have.
So how does this leave provisions, because this is setting up sidewalks have to be 1 foot off the curb? How does that leave for properties that do not have curbs? Where is that line established? And then also in residential where a lot of sidewalks actually set back 2 and 3 feet currently off the curb. So do we have exceptions in there?
The standard is actually 1 foot off the property line. So yes, it's basically almost as far
okay.
back away from the street as we possibly can.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see that now. And then, just for the record, I want sidewalks. 5 foot seems excessively wide, especially for not for commercial, but for residential areas. I would much rather see 4 foot. And also for the record, in your actual ordinance, 4 feet was not changed. It's still in there. So.
I did notice that, and I think Mr. Davis was going to take care of that typo. The only problem with going to just a straight 4 foot is, and I may be wrong, but I have to read it again. I think if you have 4 foot sidewalk, if it's over so many feet long, you have to put passing lanes in every so many feet to go to 5 feet for wheelchairs.
According to who?
According to the ADA standards. So a 4 foot is fine for one person, but for passing and everything, it's not quite wide enough. So the ADA recognizes that, and you would still have to put in these passing lanes and I wish I could remember how often they have to be in there. So that would be the only
Oklahoma
problem.
City's residential is 4 foot.
Right, and ours is now, right now.
And with ramps, they do have 5 foot ramps for ADA compliance, but
Right.
they are 4 foot. And the city, we just put in sidewalks downtown. They're not 5 foot wide on the backside of our property, of our parking lot. There's parts of them that are barely over 4 feet wide. And that was just done, 2 months ago, 3 months ago?
And like I say, the ADA requires a minimum of 4 feet. Our old ordinance says 4 feet in residential. This was making it up to 5.
Yeah.
Unless there are some physical constraints that you couldn't do that.
Yep.
All of our sidewalks, starting with this one here at City Hall, will be 5 foot, where possible.
I have a question. This just applies to residences?
Yes,
Okay, what about business areas or mixed use?
as far as what's required. Would you like to address that?
Yeah, those are unchanged. On major thoroughfares, it would still be a 6 foot minimum width, and on residential collectors, it will be a 5 foot minimum width.
So if a business or a group of businesses wanted to do a sidewalk, would they each pay the $5 permit?
We would do it on whoever the landowner is the way it would be administered, just like a driveway permit is now. Whatever each lot was, they would have to pay or take care of the sidewalk themselves.
But is that the same $5 and the same?
Right, it's just for a
permit?
permit. Again, it's just like you want to put in a driveway. You come get a permit, you hire your contractor, and take care of it with inspections and build to our standards.
Because I think most of this refers to residential, but it is for residential and commercial.
Yes, it's our sidewalk standards for everybody.
So if I wanted to put in a 3 foot wide sidewalk in front of my yard to be consistent with my neighbor, could I do it?
No, sir.
I'd have to put in a 4 foot wide sidewalk.
As of tonight, that is correct.
How wide were the sidewalks over by the school that were installed?
I'm not following.
Didn't we install sidewalks in front of the Early Child Development Center?
They were required to, I believe, as part of their site plan.
And they were 4 foot or 3 foot?
They could have been 4 on, I believe, Peniel is a residential collector, so 4 foot would have, residential local street would
So
have been.
this provision in the ordinance that says, we'll let it up to the engineer pending his approval. I think P and Z put that in there, is that right?
That's correct.
That's only up to 4 feet, that's not 3 feet.
Right.
So we're getting rid of 3 foot wide sidewalks throughout the whole city.
Yeah, as long as I'm city engineer, I would not approve a 3 foot sidewalk because it would not meet ADA standard.
So even if we had that in the overlay, it wouldn't apply.
I don't believe it would be consistent with federal regulation.
Mr. Mayor.
How the rules are right now, I mean, what you would 3 foot sidewalk.
Well, on any sidewalk today would be considered a public improvement, and the plans would have to become before this city, before this board. But right now, in your ordinance, 4 foot, 5 foot, and 6 foot are the minimums for the type of street that you're on. So again, a 3 foot sidewalk would be contrary to your ordinance as well as ADA standard.
Mr. Mayor, this is too important to just let die. I make a motion, we table this for further discussion and address it at the next meeting. Because I think there's more than half of us have at least one issue with something. So I'll make a motion, we table it, David, is that right, or?
That'd be a correct motion.
What specifically would you like to accomplish with that?
Well, there's several issues. You've got an issue, and Steve has an issue. I've got an issue. Mr. Sharvey has an issue. It's just a good assumption. He's not here. But it'd just be nice to have all the kinks worked out. I mean,
I think all of us want sidewalks. I know I campaigned with, I want sidewalks. We're going to put sidewalks out here so people can have walkability. But if there's this many questions, rather than it dying, I'd like to see
I
us
don't
work
know.
the kinks out.
I don't know how many we would resolve between meetings. I mean, I think we're just asking questions for clarification.
I can
but I
withdraw
don't
my
know if they're
motion.
deal makers or breakers. Are they?
Is there a second for the motion to table?
I'll withdraw my motion.
I was going to second that, Curtis.
No, argue away, lawyer.
I'll make a motion to table. Would you like to second it, Mr. Herron?
I will second that.
And for the record, I'm for walkability, but we got to come up with a better plan. I'm okay with this. It's just, let's talk about it.
All right. Okay. This is a public hearing, and do we have any public comments in regards to this? Yes, please. Give us your name and address, and we'd love to hear from you.
My name's Brant Davis. I live at 2936 North Alexander Lane. For the sidewalks and stuff, it would just be some people would have sidewalks and no one else would if they could afford it, right?
Yes, this would be a voluntary type of program, making it easier for people to build sidewalks in front of their residents.
Okay.
So, yes,
so
So
nobody
that's
would need to
part-
be able to connect it?
Pardon?
Like nobody would have to connect their sidewalk?
That's correct.
Okay. Is there a way that it could be just like residential versus like on a main road, there's a difference in the size? Like, do the residents have to comply with ADA federal standards?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's all my questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
Gilbert Carlson, 2601 North Rockwell. If it please the council, I think you'll all get a copy of the agenda for P&Z, and P&Z would be happy anytime we have something like this coming up to have you folks in attendance, and we'd be happy to call upon you for your input at that point. If you wish to refer this back to P&Z, that might be an appropriate thing. We'd be happy to visit with you.
I would like to have specifics about what ADA actually requires if they do require passing lanes for 4 foot. If we could get some details on that, what ADA does require for sidewalks for a future meeting.
And I would recommend some kind of a task force for purposes of discussing this maybe between now and the next city council meeting if the motion to table passes.
Are there any other comments from the public? And I close the public comments, and we have a motion and a second to table this till the next meeting. Please cast your votes. Motion passed. Item 3,
Actually, you were just dealing with the ordinance there. Probably need a similar motion on item B,
okay.
pardon me, which is the resolution that adopts the revised standard.
Motion to table item B, is that?
Yes, it'd be 2B, item 2B.
Motion to table item 2B.
I'll second that.
Please cast your votes. Motion passed. Item 3 is adoption of resolution number 1469, approving Samaritan Emergency Medical Service as the new ambulance provider for the city of Bethany. And I do believe we have a staff report for this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is on your agenda tonight. Some time ago, we had met with the city of War Acres, had a conversation about our ambulance service. We determined that it was time for us to go out for requests for proposals. That has been done. We formed an ambulance review committee, which was comprised of our fire chief, S.R. Hunter, Deputy Chief Sham Jennings, War Acres Chief Stephen Coy, and War Acres Deputy Chief Jason Mahaffey. This team of leaders in our fire services have conducted a review of the proposals that were received, and at this time I would like to turn it over to Chief Hunter and the rest of his review committee that are here tonight for a presentation of that, results of that. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Cox, Mayor, council members. Chief Jennings and Chief Mahaffey are here. They're available for any questions you might have from them. I'd like to start off this presentation making one simple statement. The objective of this, going out for our RFPs were to find the best possible ambulance service, the emergency delivery service, non-emergency delivery service for the customers in both the cities of Bethany and War Acres. There were various internal and external factors that led us to go on the search. This could take a while to go into. I'm just going to hit this as brief as I can. I'll take on any questions that you may have if you need more specificity. The idea of writing a well-rounded, reliable, cost-effective, efficient ambulance service is based on a lot of factors. For a number of years, we've been associated with one company that is not a organization that is local. They're not dedicated to this community. They serve the metropolitan area, Oklahoma City being the largest of those cities, and all the surrounding metropolitan areas, the smaller cities. One of the major factors in making this determination was we wanted to bring home that service that was more community-based, meaning that we could house those individuals. In the proposal from Samaritan, there would be 2 ambulance emergency vehicles transport vehicles in the city of Bethany, one in the city of War Acres, 24/7, 365 days a year. We do not enjoy that luxury at this point. We're kind of at the mercy of where a particular box is on any particular time. That's one of the major factors. Response times comes into play. How quick can we get the service from point A to point B when we have someone out in our community that is in need of rapid transport, rapid care and rapid transport. This doesn't change anything about the rapid care they're already getting from the local fire department and police, but to characterize an emergency as we've characterized it for a number of years as a priority 1 or priority 2 response takes in a lot of other details that, again, are a little too intense to go into tonight. But a priority 1 call is someone having a heart attack, a stroke, major trauma, impending birth. There's a lot of things that would constitute the designation of a priority 1 call. Priority 2 calls are everything else of a non-emergency status. This person is not in immediate peril, they're not dying, but they're injured and they need help. Now, there's some subjectivity to that statement. If it's you that's hurting, and in the worst day of your life, you may not agree this is a priority 2 call. It becomes a priority 1 call. With the Samaritan service that we have looked at intensely, there are no priority 2 calls. They are all priority 1 calls with a rapid response time that doesn't vary between the designation, again, of a priority 1 or priority 2 call. They will be community-based. 2 of those ambulance services or boxes will be sitting in Bethany all the time, 1 in War Acres. We have the ability to move back and forth between 2 relatively small cities, geographically speaking, rather than have to have a transport vehicle come maybe from the other side of Oklahoma City to meet our needs. The opportunity to work with the same people on a daily basis, the opportunity to train with these people. There's some intangibles, or might be considered intangibles, that are very important to us. And when I say us, I mean the fire department. Having that relationship develop ongoing makes a big difference. There's other issues that probably may not hold as much significance tonight, but I think I've hit on probably the most important. In your packet, you should have got a narrative and a comparison between we sent out RFPs to 7 different agencies. We had 4 respond back: IMSA, Mercy, Miller, and Samaritan. For the same price that we're paying IMSA now, we're going to get the aforementioned services. And I know it sounds kind of corny, but the way I look at this, we're getting a Cadillac service now for a Kia price. You know, we've been driving a Kia. We're going to move up to a Cadillac. It's not going to cost us another dime for our monthly payment. And I believe that's a pretty good analogy. I'm convinced of that. We compared some things on that narrative on the matrix that we developed, the cost per city, the response times, transport vehicles that I've talked about, mutual aid. We all have mutual aid from both Yukon and Tinker Air Force Base. So again, we'll have 1, 2, or 3 units staged somewhere else all the time in those rare occasions that we have a catastrophic event or when just everybody's having a bad day at the same time and we need to move vehicles around a little bit. Nothing's going to change in regard to mutual aid or the ability to provide services to our city's citizens. What they pay currently on their subsidy in their water bill to support this program will not change. Same price, better service. Very smooth transition going from what we're doing now to the new service. There's just when you look at this, there's just no downside to this that I see. And this was not an easy decision. It was through careful consideration and hours and hours of multiple people mulling this over. The decision was made that Samaritan is probably going to provide us the best possible service to the customers of this community. War Acres agreed with that about 45 minutes ago. They voted unanimously to accept Samaritan as their new service. It's very important, I think, for both communities to work together on this. If one or the other decided to opt out of this, it's going to remove that the optimal effect that we're getting from having those units stationed in our cities. So, I would urge you to consider that as being one of the prime factors also. I'll take any questions you may have. I think I've covered everything.
I have a question. When you say the services from like what we pay on our water bill will not change, can you clarify with all of us exactly what those services are and what that provides for our citizens?
Yes, sir. On our water bill, there's a $2.60 per month surcharge, if you will, or subsidy charge, or IMSA payment. And it has been an IMSA payment. That goes directly to IMSA to provide the services. What that does is they pay everything there's no out-of-pocket cost to a citizen of our community to have a transport in an ambulance. Now, an ambulance transport can cost to get you in there and have to start an IV and do some other things, it's going to cost about $1,400 just for the ride, about $25 a loaded mile, and if they put you on oxygen, that's another $100. So the cost can add up quickly. Those that have poor insurance or no insurance would see a negative, obviously an unfavorable result from that ride. But the subsidy picks the cost of that up.
I personally have been receiving monthly emails about response times and number of calls that IMSA had gone out on. I haven't received one of those in a while. Will I get those reports on a monthly basis with Samaritan?
I believe we have the opportunity to lay the groundwork for a better network and a better system of communication training in all aspects. I think we can pretty much cater this program to suit our needs. I think Samaritan is going to be, based on their RFP, very conducive to that. Yes, sir.
Chief, could you address the level of service of their ambulance service in terms of EMT, paramedic, ALS? How will these be classified?
It will be a paramedic service. Each box will have a paramedic and at least an EMT basic on that unit.
Do they have available ALS units as well?
Absolutely. We have medical direction. They have state-of-the-art equipment. The ambulances will be stationed in Bethany, will be brand new units. They will vary, and you had a picture of one in your packet that really, it was the first time I saw this. JD and I went out to Stroud and met with the fire chief and the city manager, acting city manager, and they had one parked out there, and I told him, I said, how does this feel to you? It was just kind of a warm feeling to see something other than a big square box, a pickup with a box on the back of it. It's streamlined, it's very sleek, it's state-of-the-art. Instead of 6 miles to the gallon, it gets 18 or 19 miles to the gallon, so fuel economy allows them a bit more efficiency over a given time period. There's just a lot of pluses in this.
Chief, for the residents at home, ALS what's that acronym stand for?
Advanced life support.
Okay.
The paramedic provides advanced life support. What that means, starting IVs, intubating, being able to put a 12 lead on, being able to use some sophisticated medical interventions, including narcotics, at the paramedic level. We are currently trying to bring our department up to the advanced level. So instead of being a basic advanced paramedic, our hopes is within the next 10 to 12 years that everyone in the Bethany Fire Department will be advanced level providers. In conjunction with this service and our service, the citizens of Bethany are going to get the best possible service in the metropolitan area. I can promise you that.
When would this be effective, and what happens tomorrow if we make this decision?
Well, nothing would happen tomorrow. We are obligated under state law to give the provider a 60-day notice of termination. We are a non-beneficiary entity, so there's not too much red tape to that except giving them 60 days. That transitionary period would be one of down to the minute. When one service stopped, another one would take over that second. So the community would not be without a transport agency.
But is there a way to keep that 60 days from being punitive?
Punitive in what regard? I'm sorry.
IMSA quits serving our people, or...
Well, they have a contractual obligation to us too. That would be abandonment on their part of their patients. We have a representative here from Samaritan that may be better suited to answer some of the more technical questions, the legalities of those things.
I'm just thinking of how the switchover goes.
It's going to be very smooth. At 0700 one morning, IMSA is no longer here, and Samaritan is with us.
But in between, you guys get the calls, so then it's up to you to make certain someone is following up on it.
There's
Well,
no-
as I said, they have a contractual obligation, both legally and ethically, to provide service to our citizens. Otherwise, they're abandoning their patients.
I think I can say it a little bit easier. If you guys are first on the scene before the ambulance gets there, IMSA in the next 60 days, and you start noticing they're 20 minutes, 45 minutes, 2 hours out, what's our recourse if they start don't even responding or horrible service, basically?
Same recourse we have now. Sometimes they're 30 minutes out now. That's why I'm standing here.
Right.
That's one of those reasons.
But is there any recourse if they really just,
None that I know of. I don't believe they would do that. Regardless, I'm not up here to really bash IMSA. That's not the intent.
Right.
We have just found we've found a Cadillac in place of a Kia. I mean, that's the simplest way to say that. So I don't foresee that there'd be any lack of service, any pullback of their responses, knowing that we were going to be out of the system in 60 days. I just don't believe they would do that.
Chief, do you want to address, of course, we have, appreciate Deputy Chief Jennings being here, and also War Acres Deputy Chief Mahaffey being here. Thank you for coming, gentlemen. Chief, do you want to address also us working together with War Acres on the timing? Because it won't be just the minimum 60 days, as I understand. We're going to coordinate this to also coordinate with them as well, correct?
Yes, to make this the transition as effective as possible and as smooth as possible, we would probably be looking at a January 1 transition, and there are several reasons for that. Mr. Davis has to look at the legal aspects of this. The contracts have to be in order. They need to find a place. They need to find a home here in Bethany and in War Acres to stage their people. They're here, again, they're here 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. So they have to have a place to eat and sleep and in their downtime. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be smooth, and the working relationship with War Acres I think is critical in this, and as well as they understood tonight at their meeting how critical, because that was one of the questions that was asked. Can we do this alone? Well, we can. We just can't do it as well.
If someone currently has a subscription service with IMSA, can they still maintain that?
They can. They can maintain that subscription service for $45 a month. So that's a relatively cheap insurance policy, and that would cover you. Well, I'm sorry, what did I say? $45 a year. I apologize. Yes, $45 a year, and that would cover them in any of the other cities that IMSA serves. But think about what we've got right now. We're served in Bethany. We go to the lake, we're not covered. We go out of state, we're not covered. We go to any city outside the metropolitan area, we're not covered. So I think probably that $45 a year is a very good investment from an insurance standpoint, if someone chose to do that. In our city, based on what how the system is set up now, there's not an option. There's not an opt-in or opt-out option. Everyone that has a water bill is going to get that subsidy attached to the water bill.
Just for clarity, the $2.50 on the water bill subsidy, does that actually include the ambulance ride, or is that just for them to show up? You still pay the pay scale of what, 1,300 to 1,500 plus mileage for the ride to the hospital.
Your
correct?
insurance pays that, and again,
Assuming you have insurance.
assuming you have insurance.
So that's on the resident. That's their responsibility.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, again, there's some other programs we're going to look at when we start the negotiations on it and sign the contract, as far as how we would, it's all in your RFP. It's not a matter of negotiations. It's in the RFP. What they would do in those cases, those individuals that don't have insurance, they would be discounted. Medicare and other programs would kick in, and they help with that because they are a citizen of Bethany.
I was always told, and the people I've worked with, it's zero. IMSA was a zero charge if you lived in Bethany.
Yes,
Period.
there's going to be no out-of-pocket expense for anyone that's paying a subsidy. Yes, that's
And
correct.
occasionally they would bill the person, and we would have to call IMSA, and they would say it was erroneous, or
IMSA will bill you.
right.
IMSA will bill who?
They actually,
The
well, sometimes
residents.
they would bill the customer and we had to get
They
them.
will bill the
You
customer.
know, get them to, well, they can wipe it off too, you know.
But they're not supposed to.
They should be billing the insurance company. Now, again, assuming you have an insurance.
But for clarity's sake, will you address that same thing will be available for us on the Samaritan system? then?
Yes, sir, absolutely. There will be a smooth transition from the IMSA to the Samaritan subsidy. That money will go, the $215,000 a year that is being paid now will go directly to Samaritan, just like it did to IMSA before, to cover those costs. So no out-of-pocket cost to those individuals that are paying the subsidy. Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
One more, the billing process between Samaritan and IMSA will stay the same, right?
Absolutely, yes.
So for purposes of clarification, if an ambulance comes, picks you up, takes you to the hospital, they will bill your insurance carrier the $1,500 for that service, correct?
If that's the qualifying amount, yes, sir.
Okay. So when we say zero amounts, the residents will still have to pay for the ambulance service through their insurance, correct?
Yes, you're not getting a free ride, but you're getting no out-of-pocket, no deductible, no copay.
Okay, that's very clear. Thank you very much.
But if they have no insurance, they won't be billed. Right?
If they have no insurance,
If they have no insurance, they will not be billed.
I'm going to have to let Jason Lycan answer a few of these questions because you're getting into an area that I don't want to tell you something that is not accurate. Can we do that? Jason, would you mind?
Good evening. My name is Jason Likens. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Samaritan EMS. I apologize. I have a little bit of a head cold, so if my throat is a little scratchy, my apologies. Okay, so I think there were 2 or 3 questions on the table, so let's go. Councilor Moore, I believe your question was.
If you didn't have insurance and you were paying this, I assume this is not insurance, it's a waiver or a service, the $2.60, and if you did have to use it, you would not be billed for the service.
Actually, it's not exactly correct. For medical necessary trips, it would actually be discounted by 40%. So they would essentially be discounted. We're not allowed to provide service cheaper than what we are to Medicare. So we actually do have to bill patients at least at a Medicare rate or above, okay? So what we do typically is we discount them by 40%. Now, if there's a hardship that we can document, then we write the entire thing off. But we have to document that
Was
hardship.
IMSA on the same program?
Yes, sir, similar, very similar. And that's mandated by federal law.
But the
If you-
$2.60 pays for you to respond.
Well, actually, no. It does pay for us to respond, but it also pays for instance, if you do have insurance, then it takes care of all of your out-of-pocket expenses. So to Councilor Palmer's question, I believe.
Right.
Yes. Any other questions?
Thank you for being here. That was very clear. I'm satisfied with the information presented.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
If
Did-
you
did
show
every-
up,
Go ahead.
if you show up and there's no transport, is there a fee to the customer?
There's no charge.
Okay.
Occasionally, we will have what we consider a abusive caller. That's very common in fire and EMS. A lot of agencies start billing people for those. We don't do that. What we do is we actually send one of our supervisors out to meet with the individual and their family, and we try and identify what the cause of that is, and we try and help them navigate the medical health care system, which is usually the reason they're in that situation in the first place. We have several case studies of that we've done in Stillwell, Oklahoma. We have a case that we did at Tinker Air Force Base, and one recently that we did in Yukon. And usually by us taking those steps, that individual stops calling because they get the care they need.
Did everyone understand what was said about the $45 annual fee? That is, if you're on your way to work and you have a wreck in Oklahoma City, that's going to cover you, and this fee won't.
No, that's a good point, sir.
We have a motion for,
I think we have a motion. Do we have a second?
we don't have a second.
I will second.
Please cast your votes. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd just like to thank everybody that participated in the review committee, Deputy Chief Mahaffey and Jennings and Chief Hunter. Thank you all very much. And please pass along our regards and thanks to Mr. Coy as well.
I'd like to thank the council. I think this is a great thing that we've done. This is going to be good for both Warwickers and the city of Bethany.
I agree. Thank you.
Metro truck.
They're a good-looking truck.
Item 4 is approval of resolution 1470, adopting budget modification number 2 of the fiscal year 2018 budget for the general fund and policy safety fund, and authorizing the city manager to expend these funds in accordance with applicable ordinances.
I have a question for the chief.
Do I have a staff report first?
That chief.
Do I have a staff report?
Police chief.
It's a tough act to follow.
We got too many chiefs in here.
We do.
You can answer it if you want to. In the list of sources of revenue, there's
Yes, ma'am.
one from Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
Yes.
I didn't realize we were working with ICE to seize people.
Those are not
How did-
people. Those were targeted drug organizations. We had an officer assigned to a task force there for 2 years. That position has not been filled for the last year.
Okay, so this wasn't for something we did. It was for money we were entitled to otherwise?
It was money that was granted to us from the federal courts based on those funds being proven to be drug proceeds.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Todd would want me to ask, though, we are, to clarify, we are participating, or are cooperating with ICE. We do work with ICE.
We have limited interaction with them. ICE does not have that large a presence within the state. Our main cooperation with them was on the drug proceed task force. And they specifically targeted criminal organizations that sold and trafficked in illicit drugs. And when those funds could be seized and proven beyond a reasonable doubt that those were drug proceeds, the task force would share in those proceeds in accordance to agreements and also the individual's participation in the actual operations. So,
This is a bit of a stretch here for that question, but I'm going to ask it anyways.
Sure.
So if you arrest somebody, officers arrest somebody that is illegal, and they're in felony behavior,
right.
what, do we just process them, or do we call ICE since they're illegal? Or
If they are arrested for a felony, they are transported to the Oklahoma County Jail. Now, Oklahoma County Jail has a representative from ICE that deals with those detainees. However, we don't really make a determination at the time of arrest of that. In most cases, because they're at county, and then that is done at their location rather than ours. Any other questions? Be glad to try to answer.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
I move approval of resolution.
Hold on.
Oh,
Hold on.
what?
Now let's go back to the staff report.
I'll make this very brief. I'm just going to explain the necessity for this. So these were proceeds that were unanticipated for this year. We do not have the budget authority currently for those to be expended, and hence the necessity of a budget amendment. I think as we put in our staff report for next year, we'll anticipate, the memo from the chief, we'll anticipate putting a contingency into next year's budget. So if we do receive such funds, we won't have to come back with the budget amendment. But that is the necessity of it.
Okay, now,
Does it tell us how it's going to be spent? How are the funds going to be spent? Is that in here?
I think the chief has identified a number of areas that he is interested in, including training, there potentially being a vehicle that's currently on a future year, a handgun purchase, some network security for our police vehicles, as well as replacement of detectors that we have.
Now, do I have a motion?
Now, I move approval of resolution number 1470, adopting budget modification 2 of the fiscal year 2018 budget.
I'll second them.
Please cast your votes. Motion passed. Item 5 is proposed executive session for purposes of review of performance of City Manager J.D. Cox and discussion of terms of continued employment as authorized by 25 Oklahoma Statute, Section 307B1 of the Oklahoma Opens Meetings Act for purposes of discussing the employment, hiring, appointment, promotion, demotion, disciplining, or resignation of any individual salaried public officer or employee. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Please cast your votes. Motion passed. We shall return. 6 is consideration of approval of changes, if any, to employment agreement and terms of employment of City Manager J.D. Cox. We have agreed to continue to keep him employed, and we have agreed to give him a 4% increase to base salary that will match the increase we've given to all employees, retroactive to September 1st, which is his employment anniversary. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Please cast your votes.
Thank
Motion.
you all very much.
Motion passed. Item 7 is a call to the public. Do we have anybody that would like to address the council? You can please step to the microphone out of the 4 people remaining in our audience tonight. No public comments. Item 8 is the city attorney's report.
All my items are on the agenda.
Item 9 is city manager's report.
I do have a few items this evening. Thank you very much. The first quarter results are in on our sales tax numbers. Our first quarter, we're reporting $1.3 million in sales. That is up by 6.6% over a year ago, which was $1.2 million. And you might recall last year we set a record, so we're headed the right direction. I have good news to report as far as our joint Public Works Authority with War Acres, the Bethany War Acres Public Works Authority. We have good news from Oklahoma City, which has agreed to begin disconnecting utility services for non-pay for when we report to them that we have non-pays on the sewer system. We don't have any teeth as far as being able to turn off sewer, so being able to turn off another utility such as water becomes important. And so we're very pleased that Oklahoma City is moving forward and working with us in that regard. The Cleaver case, you might recall, is currently on hold. We're hoping for a better resolution with the folks involved in that, and we're still hoping for a good outcome on that. The next council agenda, we anticipate having a telecommunications consultant engagement letter for you for consideration for the leasing of our water tower space that we have. The city attorney and I have been meeting, and we believe that that might be the best direction for the city, the most financially beneficial for us in the long term. We also have I wanted to share with you our vision and goals process. You recall that we had passed out drafts as a starting jumping off point way back when we first had our budget meetings, and then again when we had our council retreat. And now we've begun the process with our branding and logo task force. The vision and goals set in perfectly with branding and logo. So as part of the process of their meeting with the various groups in our community, they're going to be sharing those drafts and getting feedback from people all throughout the community. So we appreciate the branding and logo task force taking that on. The final thing to share with you is our code enforcement for update. To date, we have now broken the 1,000 mark. We are at 1,014 in notices of violations that have been issued. Of those, 242 are in Ward 1, 358 in Ward 2, 219 in Ward 3, 195 in Ward 4. Of those, 101 remain open and 913 have been closed today. We've got 5 that are headed toward abatement. So, Mr. Mayor, that's all my report tonight.
Thank you. Item 10 is the city council members' announcements, comments, and proposals. Let's start down with Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to remind the residents of Ward 2 that we have a pending meeting related to a district vision plan. So we're in the process of implementing or starting the process to get that taken care of. I'm excited about that. I think it's a good thing for our neighborhood to come up eventually with an overlay so that we can direct development and improve our neighborhood. And I would also like to remind the residents of the one-ways. There was some enforcement this weekend with a reserve officer that was there. So we're going to get the traffic study hopefully within weeks so that we can find an answer to those issues and continue to improve the area. So with that, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Dr. Harris?
I'll do an update on the library. We're currently working on the public art RFQ to go out to as a call to artists. There will be a piece that goes at the entrance to the property, and that's already in the budget. And then also there's an opportunity for some linear public art inside the building. So we're working now on that RFQ. It's in the budget. And so we're just asking for a call to artists. And then the playground committee is working on finding playground equipment that will be available for all abilities. And we're also looking at opportunities for public restroom in that area and perhaps some gazebos or tents or something that people could bring food for their family and have little birthday parties or something. So that's just some of what we're working on, but the land is bare, as you can see.
Thank you. Councilmember Moore?
I just might remind the citizens that our next meeting on 23rd Street project is next week?
Next week, yes, sir.
Next week, so if they're interested in coming and be involved on the 23rd, Peace 11 23rd Street renewal project, we'll be meeting next week.
27th.
27th.
Yes, sir.
At Cafe Cantina Bravo?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. All right.
Councilmember Herron?
Yeah, I was just going to give an update on Bethany's first TIF district. Our first meeting will be September 26th, 8:30 a.m. The only action at this meeting will be to select 3 at-large members to serve on the review committee to formalize the entire committee. And then I anticipate us meeting early October with the developer to move forward with that.
Fantastic.
That's all.
Councilmember McCutcheon?
I have nothing tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Knapp?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think all of us here on the council and all of Bethany citizens should congratulate Captain Green for graduating from the FBI Academy last Friday. Pretty significant accomplishment. From what I understand, 1% or less than 1% of applicants to that from law enforcement actually are accepted. So we have one right here in Bethany. Congratulations to Captain Green. I'd like to thank the Downtown Merchants Association for holding a reception earlier today, and just for their ongoing community involvement. They invite everybody down there on Fridays. They do a lot of things there downtown. And also, I'll join Mr. Moore and thank all of the business operators on 23rd Street for their participating in the visioning process. I believe next week they'll be doing a report out on some of the conversations they had in several of the groups, and I think there'll be a lot of creativity that is shared there. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to just say that I was sorry that I could not attend the Main Street Merchants thing that happened this evening, but my mother-in-law, who had heart surgery today, is doing very well, so we went and saw her before the council meeting. So thanks for everybody for praying for her. She's doing fantastic. And also, I would like to announce that I was asked to add 2 members to the library committee, and I appointed Councilmember McCutcheon from Ward 3 and Councilmember Moore from Ward 1. And so they will be joining the library committee and continuing the work in getting our library completed. So thank you for serving in that capacity. Item 11 is new business. Do we have any new business this evening? With no new business, I declare us adjourned until October 3rd, 2017. I call to order the Bethany Public Works Authority. Item 1 is the consent docket A and B. Do I have a discussion or motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Please cast your votes. Motion passed. Item 2 is new business. Do we have any new business? With no new business, I declare us adjourned until October 3rd, 2017. I open up the Bethany Hospital Trust. Item 1 is the consent docket A and B. Do I have a motion or discussion?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Please cast your votes. Motion passed. Item 2 is new business. Do we have new business? With no new business, I declare us adjourned until October 3rd, 2017. With that, I open up the Bethany Development Authority. Item 1 is the consent docket A and B. Do I have a motion or discussion?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Please cast your votes. Motion passed. Do we have any new business? With no new business, I declare us adjourned until October 3rd, 2017. And with that, we are adjourned. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.